Hey buds, here we are again, finally on release, and with release comes more customization, bigger levels, more skill pool and allocation, and so because of this, the build's getting a bit of an update. If you remember from the beta, I made a flurry rogue build using puncture, I was using the death trap, and I was using shadow imbuement. Well, as we've come into live now, things have changed. There's been some nerfs, and shadow imbuement, while still strong, isn't quite what it used to be by comparison to poison. So now we are playing the same sort of puncture flurry build, except instead we're subbing out the poison trap for the death, and we're putting poison imbuement in. Once you get to tier 3, tier 4 world, Dark Shroud kind of becomes almost mandatory. It's just one of those things that helps you give a bit more survivability, as well as the legendaries, which we're going to show now. On the helm, we've got damaging an elite enemy grants you barrier. So this is just very nice when you're basically boxing within these groups and mobs. You're almost always going to hit one because of the amount of AoE you're doing, so it kind of keeps you topped up with a shield. A lot of times you don't even dip into your health. For the chest there, we're running basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Because this build attacks fast and we're doing a lot of punctures and it's hitting a lot of enemies, we're constantly having that reduction up for us, making us tankier. I'm using Grasp of Shadows, which is a sacred unique. Damaging a vulnerable enemy with marksman or cutthroat skill has a 24% chance to summon a shadow clone that mimics your attack. So when I'm constantly spamming basic attacks with puncture and then popping off my flurry, that's hitting things and spawning another version of me to double that attack, which just increases our damage. For the legs, we're using each stack of momentum key passive heals you for 50 life per second. So we're just getting a flat 50 per stack, and you can get multiple stacks going, which adds up to a decent amount of healing combined with the innate stuff built in our actual ability tree. For boots, critical strikes gain 8% movement speed for 1 second up to 6 seconds. So this, because we're constantly critting as well and hitting a lot of targets, we just have extra movement speed when we're in the packs. On the bow here, I'm throwing critical strikes with poison imbued skills have up to a 10% chance to create a toxic pool that deals 2943 damage over 3 seconds. While standing in the pool, your poison imbuement has no cooldown and no charge limit. This is super nice because it just gives us free value when we're sitting there and spamming our flurries that have been poison imbued. For the necklace, flurry damages enemies in a circle around you, deals 17% increased damage. It's the bread and butter of the build. You need this to make things work. It's big damage. I'm using the Mother's Embrace ring for now. This may change in future. If a core skill hits 5 or more enemies, 25% of the resource cost is refunded. It's kind of helping me keep my resources up, especially when there's a lot of mobs. The other ring, critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 16% for 5 seconds. This is just giving us that nice little boost of attack speed, because on the weapon we have the 15, so we're getting 31% attack speed once we're attacking some mobs. That helps us just continually generate the combo points and continually get flurries out, and that combos with this, which is Condemnation, another sacred unique. It's the dagger. Your core skills deal 34% increased damage when spending 3 combo points. Your basic skills using this weapon have a 30% chance to generate 3 combo points. We are using combo points with this build, and the way this all works is you're just going in, throwing a trap down, imbuing, getting your 3 off, and flurrying, and you just repeat this process. Eventually you're going to proc, get some free poison, and then you just dump all of your energy in the mobs. If you feel like you're struggling, you can dash out or dash back in, and you always have your shielding here with Dark Shroud to kind of keep you topped up, as well as give you movement speed. Alright, now on to the skills. So similar to last time, we're running Puncture, and we're going to be going down to the Fundamental, because we want those 3 blades to spread. Next, we're going to take Sturdy for damage reduction, and Siphoning Strikes, which adds to our healing while we're in there constantly using basic attacks. The main ability we're using as a spender is Flurry, which we go down the improved Flurry. Because we're proccing vulnerability with our Puncture and with the improved Flurry, we're going to be hitting more enemies with that. Weapon mastery, it's just good. It's just flat damage for us, so it's very worthwhile taking. I like to take dash personally. I know some folks also like shadow step. It's your choice. Either one would work in this scenario. Even honestly, caltrops could be decent depending what you're doing if you want like a ice build with it. I like taking Dark Shroud, as I said, because things are getting a lot harder, and subverting Dark Shroud is giving me movement speed, which is helping me kind of race through dungeons in between. Poison Trap here is basically used just for the imbuement reset if you don't get a proc, as well as just generalized damage of poison we're going to be getting on the spot. We take Exploit, and we take Malice here, which is just increasing our damage to enemies. Precision imbuement, it creates more crit chance for our imbuement, which is good because we're constantly using them and we're getting lots of crits, and that's turning over into more damage. Taking Deadly Venom for damage and Debilitating Toxins, which this plus our other basic attack modifiers is keeping our armor up and making it so things just can't really damage us that well while we're going off. We take Trap Mastery because it's going to give us, again, more crit strike, and that's against vulnerable and crowd control. So we're constantly proccing vulnerability, we're constantly making things weaker to our attacks and keeping them poisoned, and this is all kind of mixing together and making a good stew of damage. Adrenaline Rush, just nice. When you're moving, you're gaining increased energy regen, so you can kind of run around between mobs after packs, and it's just going to help top you up. Haste is a nice one as well. If you're at 50% max energy, you gain 15% increased movement speed, and while you're below your 50% max, you get 15 attack speed. So it's a slide, it's a scale. It goes one side to the other, and it helps you on both sides. Finally, we're taking Momentum. Any cutthroat skill grants a stack of momentum for 8 seconds if they either hit a stun, dazed, frozen enemy, hit an enemy from behind. Because of the nature of us just attacking in such a wide circle, you're basically always keeping this up. And if you get up to 3 stacks, you're going to get 20% increased damage reduction, 30% increased energy regen, and 15% increased movement speed, as well as those 3 stacks with the heal. So you're going to have 150 health per second, and you're combining that with your heal from your passive in the tree here, 3%. So you're honestly looking at like over 200 health per second just from basic attacking, and you attack so fast that you're constantly topping your health up. You're constantly getting the armor on your health there, protecting you because the barrier here, you're very strong and secure. You're not dying easily to mobs as long as there's mobs to hit, and you're also just like shredding them. Like, this build does work. I don't know if it's as good as Twisting Blade. I know that's gotten nerfed, and I think that's still a very strong build, but I never was a big fan of Twisting Blade, so for me, Flurry just kind of fits that niche a lot better. Now, one thing I'll add is I haven't gone far enough in the levels to really be able to give you a proper outline of what my Paragon should be for this build. And as such, I've just been kind of taking a path that I think makes sense, taking nodes I want to get bonuses I need. Particularly combat seems to be very good. I'm liking Exploit, haven't quite got the unlock for that though yet, but it's just helping again with vulnerable enemies, which we constantly have vulnerable enemies. I also was looking at Tracker there for the poison damage that'll last longer, considering that in the future as well. I'm sure there's many different builds and variations and paths for that, but for us right now, the sort of pieces I've been doing there with combat and exploit, that's where I'm starting. You can experiment, kind of find your way. This is by no means a level 100 build necessarily, but this is what I'm currently going to be using going into World Tier 4. I will also experiment a little bit more with a penetrating shot build and a rapid fire build, as I feel like they're pretty fun to use and they might work better, the same, I'm not quite sure, but for me this is the quintessential rogue melee combat experience, and it's what I definitely would recommend over Twisting Blades if you just want to have some fun. In my personal opinion, Twisting Blades is just boring to use. I don't enjoy just having blades chase me around. I like to actually feel like I'm impacting the battlefield every time I spam my flurry and see the knives fan out and hit all these different enemies and they explode. So if you're like me, you'll definitely like flurry better. Aside from that, if you like the video, like and subscribe. I'm definitely going to be putting out more Diablo content. I'm very excited that we've got the game in our hands now and we can really dig into it and get going with more builds and videos. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.